Welcome to while loops lecture. So similar to a for loop, while loops output each element but based on a while statement being true. Once the while statement is no longer true, the while loop ends. Okay, so we'll start off with a very basic while loop of x equals 0 as our initial value. Then while x is less than 10, print x, then x plus equals 1. And this line here, the fourth line, helps us increment from 0 to 9, and that's why we have the final output as 9. We wanted it to be 10 as the final output. We simply put the less than equals sign, and as you can see, 10 is now the final output. Okay, we could also do this another way. Instead of it being plus equals, we could do equal x plus 1, and we have the exact same output. And let's say, for instance, we change this to, instead of x being equal to 0, we could do 5 as the initial value. Instead of starting at 0, we'll start now at 5. So it'll be 5 to 10. Okay. And let's say we do 10 here, and we do, let's say, 100, and we increment by 10. And now you have 10 to 100. Now, just bear in mind, we don't normally have the while loops with this kind of notation. It's normally like how we had before with the plus equals. Great. Okay, so we have this exact same output. We do, let's say, 50. We have 50 to 100. Okay. So let's say, for instance, I don't have this line of code here. So either I comment it out or I delete it. Now I'm suggesting you do not run this code. And the reason being is because what will happen is you'll have an infinite loop. Do not run code. And the reason for that is because we're not incrementing, and therefore x will always be equal to the initial value of 50. So if I run this, we're just going to get a very long list of the number 50 being printed out time and again, and it's actually going to go on indefinitely until we stop the code from running. So as you can see here, the asterisk indicates that the cell's running, and we have 50 printed out essentially infinitely. So the way to stop that is by hitting the keyboard interrupts button here. You might have to hit it a few times, and as you can see, it's stopped now. There's no asterisks in these square brackets. And if I were to undo and just do x plus equals 10, and now we have the original output. But also bear in mind the indentation here. It has to be within the for loop, the while loop, excuse me. So if I were to move this here, we'd have an error where we have another infinite loop. Okay, as you can recall, I'm sure, we just simply hit the interrupt kernel. And this is a kernel, this page here. Alright, so just move that back in place. Okay, so it doesn't have to be an x. We could change this to anything else, but we also have to change all the other x's, of course. So it could be something like cake, which wouldn't really be appropriate. It has to be something really from a coding perspective to be appropriate. Otherwise, it's just looks odd. Okay, so we'll just keep it as x for now. And moving on from that, I'm just going to scroll down now, and I'm actually just going to hide this now to make some more space. Okay, so let's say we do num equals 1 while num is less than 20, print the multiplication is num. And then we'll do num equals 2. So we're starting at 1. If we did 0, this would actually print indefinitely. So we'd have an infinite loop, because if you do 2 times 0, it's always going to be 0, and therefore it's always going to be less than 20. So we don't want an infinite loop. So we have to start with something greater than 0 when we're doing multiplication here. Okay, so we run this, and as you can see here, the multiplication is 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. Okay, so moving on from that, let's say we do division now. So we do div equals 1000 while div is greater than, as opposed to less than, 10 colon print the division is colon div. Then we'll do div. As you can imagine, instead of it being an asterisk for multiplication, it's going to be a division with the equal sign divided by 3. So 1,000 all the way to 12.34. So these are all decimal numbers here, rather than floats with these decimal numbers, which is quite long. So we could change that by doing a round, which is an inbuilt Python function. Let's say we do 2. Okay, great. Not the best looking, but we'll leave that for now. So moving on to our next while loop with arithmetic. So we'll do a floor division, which is kind of similar to what we just did before with the division. So while floor is greater than 10 colon print the floor is floor, and then we'll do floor / equals 2. As you can see, 200, 100, 50, 25, and 12. Okay, and we just do one division, we'll get the floats instead of simply integers, as you can see here. And let's say we do subtraction, so we'll do sub equals 10, while sub is greater than 0, colon, print count down to lift off in, then string plus seconds, and of course we have to keep the most important line within the while loop, so it's going to be minus equals 1 if sub is equal to 0, colon, print blast off. As you can see here, countdown to lift off in 10 seconds all the way down to 1 second, and then blast off. Okay, so moving on from that, now we'll do p equal to 0, while p is less than 8, colon, print, so we're doing formatting here, dot format p plus p. And of course, the most important line as well, as always, is usually going to be on the 4th line. So it's the p plus equals 1. So 0 plus 0, that doesn't really make much sense intuitively, so we'll do just 1 as the initial value for p. And as you can see, that makes a lot more sense. So 1 plus 1 is 2, all the way to 7 plus 7 is 14. Okay, and let's say we do a equals 1, while a is less than 8, print d plus d equals d, and then we have the modulus sign here, a plus a. So as you can see, this is going to be the exact same output, but we just have to do a plus equals 1, and as you can see, it's the same output. Okay, well, we could also change this to a multiplication. So instead of it being plus, it's going to be multiplied. So 7 times 7 is 49. And we can change these as well to, let's say, let's keep that as I. So integer, but we change it to an F for floats. As you can see, we have floats now. And we change it for all of them we wanted, but it would be somewhat excessive. There we go. So F, F, and F for the free floats in each line of the outputs. So moving on from that, what we can also do is say we have two initial values of p equals 1 and colon for o equals 1. So we're doing them on the same line for these two variables, while p is less than 15 and o is less than 15, colon, prints %i divided by %f equal to %f, and then the modulus sign or % o, so po, then p divided by o, and then we do p plus equals 1, colon, or semicolon rather, then o plus equals 1. Okay, and as you can see here we have the division. It's a bit unsightly, so we'll just change this to an integer. Okay, and let's say we leave that for now, and what we can do is use a nested while loop. Okay, so let's say we do num equals 5, semicolon, cake equals also 5, while num is less than 12, colon, while cake is less than 12, colon, prints 0 plus 1 plus 0 equals, we could actually just leave that, but okay, then we do dot format num cake num, then num plus cake. And we'll do cake plus equals 1, colon, num plus equals 1. Okay, great. So as you can see here, we have 5 plus 5 plus 5, which is a little bit hard to tell actually, because we can't really distinguish them because they're both starting with the initial value of 5. So let's say, for instance, I change this to 10 and put this to 17 for cake. So they both have the same degree of difference, but they're starting with different values. There we go. So 10 plus, well, 5 plus 10 plus 5. So in this case, the 5 is going to be for the num, and 10 is going to be for the cake, and then 5 is going to be for the num, which you can see here. So you've got num for 0, cake for 1, the num for 0, and then you've got the num plus cake for 2. Okay, so moving on from that, what we're going to do now is create a string of, or rather a list of strings that contain all of the different types of programming language that I can think of off the top of my head. So Python, of course, Java, JavaScript, R, VBA, C#, C++, Julia, and we'll do HTML, CSS, C, and I believe there's another one called Go. And then we do x equals 1, while x is less than len lang, colon, prints lang x, and we'll do semicolon, x plus equals 1. Okay, actually we'll do that as 0. So we get all of them output. So it's obviously in order, so Python all the way to Go. But what we could do is, let's say we start with 2, and run this. So it's incrementing from Python, JavaScript, VBA, C++, HTML, and C. So we're starting with 0, that's all it's going to be for Python then. So if we do So we start at 1 actually. Then it's going to be JavaScript, R, C#, Julia, CSS, and Go. So Java, then R, then C#, then Julia, and then CSS, and then lastly Go. Okay, so moving on from that, what we're going to do now is try to convert a while loop. We'll try to convert a for loop from a while loop. So what we're going to do is say g equals 0 while g is less than 5 colon print g plus equals 1. So it's pretty bog standard while loop here. And how would we go about converting this into a for loop? Well, all we do is for, let's say, d in range 5 colon print d, and that should be fine. Great, so we have the exact same output. And notice, of course, that we only have 2 lines of code here. With a while loop, we've got a total of 4, but we could, of course, reduce this if we did the semicolon with the exact same output. Okay, so moving on from that, let's say we do a equals 1, semicolon, b equals 1, while a is less than 5, colon, while b, so it's a nested while loop, so same as the a, we have while b is less than 5, print, so again we're using formatting, dot format a b plus a. Doesn't really matter actually. I could actually ignore and just have 1. I could actually leave out the b and just have a and get rid of the while loop, the nested while loop here, because it's going to give the same output either way. Then I do a plus equals 1, b plus equals 1. And as you can see, we have 2 all the way to 8. Okay, so how would we be able to do this with a for loop? Trying to get the same output here with 2 nested for loops. Well, let's just try first. For j in range 1 to 5 colon, for k in range 1 to 5 for the nested for loop, print plus dot format j, k, and j plus k. And as you can see here, we don't have really the desired output that we're looking for here. We only want to have a total of 4 lines of code output, but instead we have far more than that. We have a total of 4 times what we were hoping for. So what we can do is instead we'll do for t in range 1 to 5 colon print plus dot format t plus t. Great. So as you can see here, we don't need to really use a nested for loop. Okay. And then let's say we do, and num1 equals 0, excuse me, while num1 is less than 11 colon print while num1 equal num1 for g in, we'll just do the list itself directly, so 50, 80, 110 colon res equals num1 plus g print res, and then num1 plus equals 4. Okay, so what we have here is a for loop nested within a while loop. So we're starting with initial value of 0 for the num, and then on the third line here we have while num1, so it's a string, so it's going to be from 0 all the way to 10, and we're doing here is for G in 50, 80, and 110, so this is this list here that we directly made, and then we're simply adding from 0 to 10 G. So that's going to be done a total of 3 times. Then we print res, so we're totaling these two values from num1 and G, and then we're incrementing by 4. So as you can see here, 50, 80, 110, which is the initial values, because obviously when you combine num1 being 0 to all of these elements, it's just going to be the elements themselves. So 50, 80, 110, and then again when we start with 4, so we're incrementing from 0, then to 4, and then to 8. So next time it's going to be 54, 84, 114, and then after that we add 8 on. So you have 58, 88, and 118. Okay, so let's say we do just one more of, so we increment by 20, and we'll change this to 110. So just scroll down here. So similarly, we're incrementing, instead of it being from 0 to 10, it's from 0 to 110, or 119 rather, and we're incrementing by 20 each time. So it's going to be 20 plus 50, 20 plus 80, 20 plus 110, and that's why we have 70, 100, and 130, and so on and so forth, till we get to the final one, where it's going to be 150, 180, and 210. Okay, so that concludes my lecture on while loops. I hope that's been insightful, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A. Thanks.